Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the inaugural National Day for Victims and Survivors of Terrorism. I would like to welcome those joining us via the live stream from across the United Kingdom and beyond. Many of those gathered here today and on the live stream have been directly affected by terrorism, whether as victims, survivors, bereaved family members, friends, or loved ones. Others join us in support and solidarity. Thank you all for being with us. We're honoured to welcome Their Royal Highnesses, the Duke and Duchess of Gloucester, to today's ceremony. We're also privileged to be joined by the Prime Minister, the First Minister, and representatives from the devolved governments and public services across the United Kingdom. Before we begin, I should briefly introduce myself. My name is Gerald Oppenheim, and I've spent more than 2 decades working to support people affected by emergencies, disasters, and acts of terrorism as a trustee of both the London and National Emergencies Trusts. Through that work, I've had the privilege of working alongside victims, survivors, bereaved families, and communities affected by traumatic events, and of seeing both the challenges they face and the extraordinary strength that they show. I've also learnt from those I've got to know how they've been profoundly affected by what they have experienced and how important it is that they are listened to and receive practical support, recognition, and assistance that they need in the aftermath of a traumatic event. I hope I've become something of an advocate on that. It's therefore a real honour to be with you today and to serve as host for this inaugural National Day. This afternoon's ceremony is structured around 3 chapters. Our first chapter, Remembrance, creates space to remember those whose lives have been taken and to reflect on the lasting impact of terrorism. Our second chapter, Hope and Resilience, recognises the strength shown by victims, survivors, families, and communities as they navigate life after terrorism. Our third chapter, Unity and Community, reflects on the compassion, solidarity, and support and help as people move forward together. These themes have been shaped by the experiences, insights, and reflections generously shared by victims and survivors through consultation and engagement. Throughout the ceremony, we will hear from a number of speakers who've kindly agreed to share their experiences and reflections with us. We will also pause at various moments for musical interludes, reflection and remembrance. It's now my privilege to introduce our first speaker, the Security Minister, Dan Jarvis, MP, who I now invite to the stage.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon, Your Royal Highnesses, Prime Minister, representatives from the Scottish and Welsh governments and the Northern Ireland Executive, distinguished guests, and all of those joining us via the live stream. It is a great honour and a huge privilege to join you all today as we mark this very significant moment, the United Kingdom's first National Day for Victims and Survivors of Terrorism. As the Security Minister, I've met many victims, survivors, and bereaved families right across the United Kingdom. I know how important it is that their experiences and those that they have lost are recognised and remembered. And that is why today matters so much. And I'm proud to be here as we mark this important moment. Today is for everyone whose lives have been changed in ways they never chose by terrorism. For those whose lives were taken, we remember them and all they meant to those who loved them. For those who have lost someone they love, who continue to live with their absence, and for those who survived but whose lives were forever altered. Today, and every year from now, we will ensure that those affected by terrorism are recognised and remembered. Now, I recognise that for many of you here today, this will be a deeply personal occasion. So to everyone here, and to those joining us by live stream, whose lives have been changed by terrorism, let me say that you have my deepest respect and solidarity. Many of you have endured experiences that are unimaginable. Many of you have drawn on these experiences to help others. And many of you have worked tirelessly to strengthen the support available to victims and survivors. And others have understandably carried their impact more privately and away from public view. There is no single way to respond to the impact of terrorism, and no two experiences are the same. I also recognise that, of course, the National Day cannot undo what has happened. No ceremony can ever remove the pain and impact of terrorism, and no words can ever fully capture its effect on your lives. But I hope that today offers something important nonetheless, a reminder that your experiences matter and that this country stands alongside you. Now, at the heart of this National Day are the voices of the victims, the survivors, and the bereaved families. And in a moment, we will hear reflections from some of them. Their experiences are personal and unique, but together they remind us of the profound and enduring impact of terrorism. Some of what is shared today will resonate deeply, while other experiences may be very different from our own. By listening, we recognise those experiences and deepen our understanding of their impact and reaffirm the values that bring us all together: compassion, dignity, solidarity, and respect. Now, terrorism seeks to create fear and division, but it does not have to define what comes next. Time and again, we see the best in people in the wake of terrorism. We see the support for those who are grieving. We see communities come together after tragedy, and the commitment of victims, survivors, and bereaved families to ensure that others do not face those experiences alone. That spirit of compassion, solidarity, and resilience is reflected in those gathered here today. I would like to take the opportunity to thank all of those who've helped bring us to this moment. I am especially grateful to those who have chosen to share their experiences as part of today's ceremony. Their willingness to do so has helped shape this first National Day and what it stands for. Thank you too to everyone who has campaigned for this National Day, contributed to today's event, or simply joined us here today. Your efforts have helped make this moment possible, and by doing so, you have helped establish a National Day that will be marked every year on this day. By gathering here today, we make a simple but important statement that those lives who've been changed by terrorism will not be forgotten, that those lives we have lost will be remembered, and that victims, survivors, and bereaved families will always have a place in our national memory. In coming together in remembrance, recognition, and solidarity, we show that terrorism will never overcome our determination to stand together. As I conclude my remarks today, I would like, and from the bottom of my heart, to pay tribute to the victims, the survivors, and the families to whom this day will be forever dedicated. Today and always, we honour them, we remember them, and we affirm our commitment to never forget them. Thank you.
Thank you, Security Minister, for those thoughtful remarks, which remind us why today is so important. They remind us of the importance of ensuring that victims and survivors of terrorism are recognised and that those whose lives have been lost are remembered. We now begin the first chapter of today's ceremony, Remembrance. In this chapter, we create space to remember those who are no longer with us, while recognising the enduring impact that terrorism has on so many lives. We begin with a reading from Cheryl Stollery, and I now invite Cheryl to the stage.
Good afternoon. I'm pleased to be with you all today at this inaugural UK National Day for Victims and Survivors of Terrorism. My name is Cheryl Stollery, and on the 26th of June 2015, I was involved in the Sousse, Tunisia attack, where 38 people were killed, including my husband, John, and 29 other UK nationals. Many others were injured and harmed, and lives were changed forever. Some of you here today were in Sousse on that day, or will have had loved ones who never came home. I know you will all have treasured memories of your own, of the loved ones who are no longer with us, but you will always remember them from the time you shared together and the memories that you keep safe. What is important for me today and the days that follow is the way in which we choose to remember John and know he would wish to be remembered for the life that he lived and the difference he was able to make for others, for us, his family, and as a social worker for children and young people, and not just for the way he died. John inspired many through his wicked sense of humour, his cheeky smile, and the kindness he showed to all who knew him. Those are just a few of the things we loved about him. He was just John, a man who was there for everyone, and nothing was ever too much trouble. We miss him every day and still live through the many highs and lows that find our strength and resilience through the love that we shared, the memories we keep safe in our hearts, and our commitment to his legacy of kindness for others. Like many of you here, we still search for answers on ways which we can honour our loved ones and remember all the good times that we shared together. I came across the poem, We Remember Them, at the beginning of my journey of grief, and on reflection it tells a story of how we remember our loved ones throughout the seasons of every year. I believe it may give comfort and hope that your loved ones will stay safe and close and always remembered as you make your way through life's onward journey. Please note in the order of service, in the last section marked All, I welcome you to join me in speaking the final words in one loud voice. We remember them. At the rising of the sun and its going down, we remember them. At the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we remember them. At the opening of the buds in the rebirth of spring, we remember them. At the blueness of the skies and in the warmth of the summer, we remember them. At the rustling of the leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we remember them. At the beginning of the year and when it ends, we remember them. As long as we live, they too will live, for they are now part of us, as we remember them. When we're weary and in need of strength, we remember them. And when we're lost and sick of heart, we remember them. And when we have joy we crave to share, we remember them. And when we have decisions that are difficult to make, we remember them. When we have achievements that are based on theirs, we remember them. Please join me. As long as we live, they too will live, for they are now part of us as we remember them. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl, and thank you for sharing John's story with us today and for such a beautiful and deeply moving reading of We Remember Them. Quite a poem. Through your words, you have helped us reflect not only on John, but on all those whose lives have been taken by terrorism and on the memories that continue to live on in those who loved them. Many of us carry someone with us today. For some, it may be a loved one who was lost. For others, it may be memories of events that changed the course of their lives. We also remember the many victims, survivors, families, friends and communities whose lives have been touched by terrorism in all its forms. We will now observe a 2-minute silence, and you can remain seated for that. And following the silence, we'll stay together in quiet reflection as we listen to a musical interlude before moving on to the next chapter of our ceremony. Please join me in observing a 2-minute silence. Thank you. We've taken time, please. We've taken time to remember those whose lives were taken by terrorism and to reflect on the profound impact it has on individuals, families, and communities. Alongside that loss, there are also stories of courage, perseverance, and hope. Stories of people who, despite all that they've endured, continue to rebuild, to support others, and to look forward. And it's to those stories that we now turn. Our second chapter is hope and resilience. Hope and resilience do not mean forgetting what has happened. They do not mean that the impact of terrorism disappears with time. Rather, they speak to the extraordinary strength shown by so many victims, survivors, families, and communities in navigating life after terrorism and in finding ways to move forward whilst carrying those experiences with them. We're privileged to hear some of those experiences today, and our first speaker for this chapter is Paul Price. Paul has generously agreed to share his reflections on hope and resilience, and I know his words will resonate with many of us here. I now invite Paul to come to the stage.
Good afternoon. My name is Paul Price. 9 years ago, on the evening of the 22nd of May 2017, I stood in the city room of the Manchester Arena waiting to collect my daughter and her friend from an Ariana Grande concert. Beside me was the woman I loved, Elaine McIver. In an instant, everything changed. Elaine was killed, along with 21 others. I was left with life-changing injuries. I spent the next 9 months in hospital. When I finally came out, the world I knew had gone. I had to relearn how to walk, eat, dress myself, and live independently. The simplest everyday acts that most people take for granted became mountains I had to climb every single day. I could not work. The future I had imagined with Elaine vanished in an instant. For a long time, I felt lost. Yet, here I stand today on the first National Day for Victims and Survivors of Terrorism, speaking about hope and resilience. I do so not because the pain has disappeared. It has not. But because I have discovered that both hope and resilience can be rebuilt, brick by careful brick, even when everything has been shattered. Hope, for me, is not a soft or naive feeling. It is the quiet decision made again and again that tomorrow can still hold purpose, even when today is heavy with loss. In those early months, hope was simply the determination to take one more step in physiotherapy. Later, it became the belief that my experience might help someone else feel less alone. Hope is the refusal to let what happened write the final chapter of my life or of Elaine's. Resilience is not about being unbroken. It is about learning how to live with the breaks. I had to relearn the basics of being human after catastrophic injury. I had to rebuild an identity that no longer included the partner I had planned a future with. Resilience meant accepting help when pride wanted me to refuse it. It meant sitting with the grief instead of running from it. It meant discovering that strength is not the absence of vulnerability, but the willingness to keep going while carrying that vulnerability. There were days when resilience looked like simply getting out of bed. There were other days when it looked like standing in front of an audience and telling the truth about what terrorism does to ordinary people. I did not rebuild alone. Surgeons, nurses, therapists, and medical teams in the hospital gave me the ability to move again. Family and friends held me when I could not hold myself. Then came the organisations that gave me purpose again. Day One Trauma Support, Homicide Victim Support, Strength to Strength, 3 Nines, and Survivors Against Terror. Through them, I found a community of people who understood without needing long explanations. I began working with Prevent and with Resilience in Unity, speaking in schools, community centres, police briefings, and local authority events across the country. Those platforms allowed me to turn private pain into public service. Every one of those relationships reminded me that survivors are not a burden on society. We are a resource if we are given the chance to contribute. I will never be the man I was before the 22nd of May 2017. That man died in the city room with Elaine. The man who emerged has had to adapt every part of daily life, physically, emotionally, and practically. I've learned to manage ongoing pain and limitations. I've learned to speak openly about trauma without being defined solely by it. Most importantly, I have found renewed purpose in supporting others who are walking similar paths. Work that once felt impossible has become central to who I am. Talking about resilience and prevention is not just something I do, it is how I honour Elaine and how I refuse to let the attack have the last word. Terrorism does not end when the emergency services leave the scene. It continues for years in hospital wards, in empty chairs at the dinner table, in children growing up without a parent, and in survivors who must relearn how to inhabit their own bodies. Recognition is not about dwelling on the past. It is about acknowledging the ongoing reality of that past in the present. When a nation remembers its victims and survivors, it says, your lives matter, your losses matter, and we will not look away. Silence and invisibility compound the original injury. Recognition begins the process of healing for individuals and for the country. I hope this day becomes a fixed point in the national calendar where survivors and the bereaved know they are seen. I hope it creates space for stories that are still too often told only in private. I hope it strengthens the practical support available long after the headlines have moved on. Mental health care, peer support, financial help, and recognition of the lifelong impact of these crimes. Most of all, I hope it tells every person affected by terrorism in this country, you are not alone. Your experience is valued, and your resilience is part of the nation's strength. Terrorism seeks to destroy hope and fracture communities. Our answer must be the opposite. Hope is possible. Resilience can be built. Support exists, and more is needed. Victims and survivors are not passive recipients of tragedy. we are active contributors to a safer, more compassionate society. Elaine McIver's life was taken, along with 21 others. I miss and love her every day, but her memory and the memory of every person killed or injured by terrorism can still shape a better future if we choose to carry it with purpose. On this first National Day for Victims and Survivors of Terrorism, I ask you to remember not only what was lost, but what has been rebuilt and what remains possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Your remarks have been moving and courageous. They have reminded us that behind every act of terrorism are individual lives, relationships, and futures that are changed forever. In speaking about Elaine and about the profound impact her loss has had on your life, you've shared something deeply personal with us today. We know that cannot have been easy, and we're grateful for the openness, honesty, and trust you have shown in sharing those experiences with us. Through the way you spoke about your own journey and the people who stood beside you along the way, you've given us insight into what hope and resilience can look like even after unimaginable loss. Not as abstract ideas, but as something lived day by day, often in the most challenging of circumstances. While every person's experience is different, I'm sure many people here today will have recognized something of their own journey in your reflections. Thank you again for sharing them with us. Our next speaker in this chapter is Thelma Stober. Thelma will offer her own reflections on hope and resilience and on the strength found in continuing forward after life has been changed by terrorism. I now invite Thelma to the stage.
Your Royal Highnesses, Prime Minister, First Minister, representatives of the devolved government, ladies and gentlemen here and virtually, and in the United Kingdom and all over the world. I am a fortunate survivor of the London bombings, which occurred on the 7th of July 2005, killing 52 innocent people and injuring over 700. I suffered life-changing injuries, including the loss of a limb, my hearing, and latent brain injuries. Since then, I have dedicated my life to working with and supporting survivors, bereaved families of terrorism, and other major crimes and incidents. I have lobbied for, and I speak nationally and internationally, about the need for adequate, immediate, long-term support, the impact of terrorism, and for the voices of victims to be placed at the center of all counter-terrorism policies, practices, and procedures. Today, on the UK First National Day for Victims and Survivors of Terrorism, we come here together to remember those whose lives have been taken forever, those whose lives have been changed or deeply affected by acts of terrorism. We remember victims, survivors, bereaved families, first responders, friends, colleagues, and communities. We remember not only the events themselves, but also the human stories behind them. The lives interrupted, the futures altered, the moments of ordinary happiness that were suddenly and tragically taken away. For many people, the impact of terrorism may be measured in only seconds or minutes. But for those of us directly affected, its consequences are often measured in years and decades to come. The journey after such an event is very rarely straightforward. Grief does not follow a timetable. Trauma does not respect anniversaries. Healing is not a destination that can simply be reached and left behind. For many of us survivors and families of bereaved, there are moments of progress, moments of setbacks, and moments when the weight of loss reappears unexpectedly, even many years after. Yet alongside that reality, there is another story, one of extraordinary resilience and hope. Resilience is not about forgetting or being unaffected by what has happened. Rather, it is about finding the strength to continue, despite profound loss and adversity. It is about choosing, day after day, to keep moving forward. It is about finding meaning, purpose, and hope, even when life has been irrevocably changed. It is also about building our communities and our country. Many of those affected by terrorism demonstrate courage that quietly inspires all of us. They show us that resilience can be found not only in the public acts of leadership and advocacy, but also in the everyday acts of living, caring for others, returning to work, supporting families, and rebuilding a sense of normality. But resilience is very rarely achieved alone. One of the most important lessons we can learn from those of us affected by terrorism is the vital role that support, connection, and understanding play in recovery. When tragedy strikes, people often speak of communities coming together in the immediate aftermath, and support matters enormously. Yet what can just be as important is the support that remains once the headlines have faded. Public attention is moved elsewhere, and the years begin to pass. The phone calls that continue, the messages to check in, the colleagues and friends who remember, the neighbors who listen, the organizations and people that remain alongside us for the long term, the gatherings, the anniversaries, the memorials. I can say without a shadow of doubt that in my experience, there are many examples of this kind of support. These acts may seem small, but they make a profound difference to us. Human connections have power to reduce isolation, restore confidence, and remind us that we are not carrying our burdens alone. Being heard, understood, and believed, remembered, can be an important part of healing. Compassion does not move pain, but can help us bear it. As victims and survivors, we carry visible and invisible scars. Our experiences may shape how we see the world, how we relate to others, and how we navigate everyday life. We are honored best when we are listened to, without judgment, when our individuality is respected, our journeys and recognitions that there's no simple way to grieve, recover, or remember. Today is also a reminder that acts of terrorism seek not only to physically harm individuals, but create fear, division, and mistrust. Our response must therefore be stronger than remembrance alone. It must be a commitment to solidarity over division, to understanding over hate, and to hope over fear. Every time communities stand together, every time people choose compassion over prejudice, every time we support those who have suffered, we demonstrate that terrorism cannot succeed in destroying the values that bind us together. As we reflect today, let us draw inspiration and courage from victims, survivors, and bereaved families. Let us recognize the strength that we have shown over many decades. Let us renew our commitment to supporting each other, not only today, but many years ahead. Hope can be hard to speak about after such pain. It must never be used to minimize grief, rush healing, or suggest that loss can simply be left behind. Hope does not mean forgetting or that healing is easy. Hope means believing that even after terrible loss, people can still find support, care, and connection, and in our own way, continue to make valuable contribution to society. It means building a future where victims, survivors, and bereaved families receive the protection, the respect, the practical help we deserve, and where no one is left to face trauma and loss alone. Hope is found in choices we make every day: to listen with care, to reject hatred, to challenge division, and to stand beside those who are hurting. These choices may seem small, but together they help build communities that are safer, kinder, and stronger. Many people affected by tragedy have turned painful experiences into something positive through peer support, advocacy, mentoring, education, or creative expression. Let us hold on to hope, not a hope that ignores suffering, but a hope grounded in our shared humanity, a hope that recognizes the power of kindness, connection, and understanding, a hope that believes that even after the bleakest of events, people and communities can find ways to rebuild, to support one another, and to move forward. Let me end this by saying, to all those of us affected by terrorism, we all offer our deepest sympathy and lasting respect. Your pain is real. Your loss matters. Your voices matter. And the people you love will always have a place in our remembrance. So let us leave here today with compassion in our hearts, hope in our voices, and determination in our actions. Let us remember those we have lost, not only in silence, but through the lives we chose to lead, by working for peace, standing against hatred, listening with care, and supporting one another for the long term. Let us be clear to the government, to the police, to the emergency services, to support organizations, and to every person working to keep our community safe. We will stand shoulder to shoulder with you. Terrorism may seek to divide us, frighten us, and break us, our spirit. It will never succeed. We will stand together. Today we remember, and we will continue to remember. And today, let us affirm through compassion, resilience, and solidarity that hope endures. Thank you.
Thank you, Thelma, for those powerful reflections. Through your words, you've spoken to the strength and resilience shown by victims and survivors across our communities. You've spoken about the power of compassion, understanding and human connection, and the difference they can make in helping people navigate even the most difficult of circumstances. Your reflections remind us that while every experience is unique, no one carries these experiences entirely alone. They speak to the importance of community, solidarity, and the people who stand beside us along the way. We'll now take a moment to reflect through some music. Thank you, Imogen, for that beautiful performance and for giving us time for a moment of reflection and connection. We now move to the final chapter of today's ceremony, Unity and Community. Terrorism seeks to divide, but it does not have the final word. Time and time again, we see people and communities come together, responding with compassion, solidarity, and support for one another. Our next speaker, Patrick Goulbourne, has served with the London Fire Brigade since 1997 and is currently Assistant Commissioner for Operational Resilience and Control. In 2017, he served in command roles during the terrorist attacks at Westminster Bridge, London Bridge, Finsbury Park and Parsons Green, as well as the fire at Grenfell Tower. Today he will share his reflections on unity, community and the importance of standing together in the aftermath of tragedy. I now invite Patrick to the stage.
Royal Highnesses, the Duke and Duchess of Gloucester, Prime Minister, First Minister, and representatives of the devolved, and all the distinguished guests. As I open the third and final chapter of today's ceremony, focused on unity and community, I have the honour and privilege to say a few remarks on behalf of all first responders. This is not only from the fire and rescue services, police and ambulance services, but all services, including our voluntary sector, who respond united in our endeavour to protect and serve our communities. First, I'd like to take a moment to pay our respects for those who are not with us, who have tragically lost their lives to terrorism. On behalf of first responders, you will never be forgotten. We dedicate our lives to public service. We treat the role that we have within our communities, whether here or abroad, as the greatest honour. This is not just a job, it's a vocation, it's a way of life. We relentlessly prepare, test, and exercise for different scenarios in any location, whether above or below ground, at sea, or in transportation. To deliver the best possible response, no single agency can do that on their own. It must be collaborative and unified at every level. We are adapting daily to new challenges in our relentless endeavour to protect the public. However, we cannot deliver the best service without you. Your influence should never be underestimated, and on behalf of all first responders, I share my sincerest thanks to your courage, your guidance, and your influence. Communities and people must be at the heart of everything we do. It can be easy to fall in the trap of process, policy, and procedure, but it's nothing unless our focus remains on those who we serve, whether we are jointly preparing, answering the call, or recovering from an incident. Your strength, courage, compassion, and kindness have undoubtedly shaped first responders, changed legislation to improve the public safety, and will continue to make a difference to keep the public safe and ultimately save lives. I say this with personal experience of listening to many occasions to Thelma Stobar, Travis, Frayne, and many others, each time learning something new to act on. I remember being so kindly invited into the home of Figan Murray, listening all afternoon to her personal experience, and driving home realising that there are so many things that we can do to change. Since then, Figan has spoken to many of my commanders. Her recorded message starts every single National Interagency Liaison Officers course in the United Kingdom to ensure our focus is on people and communities, and it's always of the highest priority for all of our delegates from the Blue Light Services, the military and Coast Guard. Recently, there has been so much talk of division, but it's not reflected in the United Kingdom that I am proud to serve. At every single incident that I've attended in 29 years of service, communities immediately come together. They are unified in their common goal to help, whether directly at the most critical points of incidents or to longer-term support. The unity shown is unmatched, it's unfiltered, it's unrestricted and unwavering. Whether they're public, volunteers, community leaders, businesses, too many to list. They exemplify the themes of today, which are community and unity. So, in closing, on behalf of all first responders, I would like to thank everybody who has played a part in making the National Day for the Victims of Terrorism quite rightly have its important place in the UK calendar. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. You've reminded us that responding to terrorism is never the responsibility of one person, one organisation or one service alone, but a collective endeavour built on partnership, trust and a shared commitment to supporting those affected. You spoke powerfully about the profound influence that victims, survivors and bereaved families have had in shaping the way first responders prepare for, respond to and recover from incidents. At a time when there's often much discussion of division, you have also reminded us of something many people will recognise, that in the aftermath of tragedy, people and communities so often come together with compassion, generosity and a determination to help one another. Our next speaker is Travis Frayne, who will share some remarks and a poem reflecting on unity and community. I now invite Travis to the stage. Thanks, Travis.
Good afternoon, everyone. Your Royal Highnesses, Prime Minister, First Minister, and representatives of the devolved governments, friends and colleagues. It's a great privilege to be asked to deliver the closing remarks for this chapter of today's service, the inaugural British National Day for Victims and Survivors of Terrorism, a day that so many of us in this room have spent years fighting for. And it's my hope, like everyone else in this room, that today is, in the years to come, a date that will be a regular fixture in the diary for all in this country, and indeed in the public psyche. A date where we pay tribute to the survivors, the first responders, and remember those loved ones who are no longer with us as a result of terrorism. And that includes both those killed in these heinous attacks, but also those for whom the trauma was simply too much to live with. It is also my hope that this date will provide a milestone whereby we can educate the public on how to spot the warning signs of radicalisation and how to intervene early to play their part in preventing future attacks. And one only has to look across the length and breadth of this room to see that no community, no religion, no colour or creed is immune to the trauma and the impacts of terrorism. We're all affected, and it is important that both government and the wider public not just hear the voices of those affected by terrorism, but listen. Now, before I go further, I feel it would be remiss of me not to take this chance in front of all of you to express a brief round of thanks. First and foremost to their Royal Highnesses and to the Prime Minister for taking the time out of their busy schedules to be here and join us today. Your presence at today's event ensures that this is a truly national day, and your presence here demonstrates that the country stands firmly in solidarity with this community of individuals affected by terrorism. And I must also take this opportunity to express my sincere thanks to the Security Minister, Dan Jarvis, and his team at the Victims of Terrorism Unit, without whose relentless support this day would not have been possible. Thank you. So, to bring to a close this final chapter, I was asked to deliver a reading of my choice For anyone in this room who knows me, they'll know that I'm not particularly the most poetic or creative individual. So you'll forgive me if this is a rather uncreative poem and one that many of you are already very familiar with. But I think the poem I've chosen very aptly describes the feelings that I and many others in this room today will feel when in the common company of other individuals also affected by terrorism. It, in my opinion, very appropriately describes our nation as a whole, and more importantly, the community of common circumstance in which we all find ourselves. A club, you might argue, or you might say, which no one would ever choose to be in, but for which I have been incredibly grateful to have had the support of over the many years since my attack. I'm sure many of you will be familiar with this poem, and it's always resonated with me for quite a personal reason, actually. And I remember after the 5th anniversary of my attack at Westminster, I boarded a train back up to the north, and like many of you, I'm sure will do at the end of today, cracked up my laptop, and I was keen to just relax and try and switch off after a very busy and very tiring few weeks having organised the commemorations. And I remember when I got my laptop open, the first film that popped up was the Bond film, Skyfall, which I'm sure many of you here will be very familiar with, having watched it. And about halfway through that film, there's a scene where Bond, very dramatically, as he always does, emerges from Westminster Tube Station after an explosion has taken place. And I remember fire engines and ambulances are flooding the streets in that scene, pedestrians are running in every direction, and of course gun-toting police officers are rushing in to help with the shadow of Parliament looming behind them. And of course, it stuck with me because it paints a scene all too familiar for those of us in the room who were affected by that attack in Westminster in March 2017. And I remember, as the scene ends, a poem is read aloud in the background. Now, coincidentally, I suppose as if to provide even more of a reason for the suitability of this poem, I also recently found out, just a few days ago, that one of our army regiments in Hereford, a unit at the heart of preventing attacks like those that have affected each and every one of us in this room today, they've actually adopted recently a line from this poem as a bit of an informal motto for the regiment. So this is a few lines from Ulysses by Alfred Lord Tennyson. Though much is taken, much abides, and though we are not now that strength which in old days moved earth and heaven, that which we are, one equal temper of heroic hearts made weak by time and fate, but strong in will, to strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield. So, ladies and gentlemen, if there's one thing that I hope we can all take from today's event, it is not to yield. Not to yield to terrorism, not to yield to the fear and to the hopelessness that can so often threaten to engulf us after these traumatic acts of violence. Not to yield to hate. Not to yield to those who tell you that it isn't possible, that you can't make a difference, that you're simply wasting your time. You are all truly incredible, remarkable people, and I am so proud to be able to stand in this room alongside each and every one of you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Travis. As our final victim and survivor speaker today, you've brought together many of the themes that have run throughout the ceremony this afternoon. You've left us with an important message, not to yield to fear, division, or hopelessness, but to continue forward with determination, compassion, and hope. I will now invite our final speaker to the stage, the Prime Minister, the Right Honourable Andy Burnham MP. Prime Minister.
Your Royal Highnesses, First Minister, members of the devolved governments, ladies and gentlemen, truly it is a privilege to be with you all this afternoon, so thank you. And thank you for the powerful words of all of our speakers. I was determined to be with you all today to show my support for this, the first National Day for victims and survivors of terrorism. and express my deep personal admiration for all of you, and I will come back to that at the end. I have got to know some of you well over the years, following the terrorist attacks at the Manchester Arena and more recently at the Heaton Park Synagogue. I've got to know Colin and Wendy Parry well over the years, who lost their son Tim alongside Jonathan Ball in Warrington, where I grew up. It is good to meet some of you for the first time who I've not got to know before. But from all of my experiences, what I do know is this: as the days pass and the world moves on, you can't. And we've heard that today so powerfully from Paul. You can't. There is no closure. Nothing is the same again, and every day brings pain. And you carry the grief of your loved ones, as we heard from Cheryl and Paul and others, and devastating, life-changing injuries and trauma. So this day does matter, as all the speakers have said. It is our way of saying that we see you, we hear you, we stand with you, and the whole country does too. I want to thank everyone who campaigned for this day to make it happen, and the victims and survivors of more than 20 atrocities. We think of those victims today, the loved ones that you lost, but we thank those who have stood strong in all those years since. And we thank everyone who's made the organisation of today possible. And Patrick, can I say to you, as a representative of all of our emergency services today, people who attended the incidents that affected so many people here, but are still and forever in the memory of the country, can I thank you, and through you, all of those people who attended and supported people at those events and saved lives. We will never forget it. I want to say as Prime Minister that this gathering, and I'm proud too of the Security Minister who's worked to make this happen, it matters for another more difficult reason, and it's one that I can talk about perhaps in a way that the other speakers couldn't today. It helps bring forward change that the country needs, change in the way that we support people after these devastating and traumatic events. I know from the many hours I've spent with survivors in Manchester that too often people have not had the support that they deserved, and they've had to fight for it in the aftermath. Paul, I think I remember you making that point to me. I want to salute today some of the young survivors of the Manchester Arena attack. Alicia Taylor, Ellie Taylor, Abby Quinn, who bravely recounted their stories to the Be the Difference research project led by my friend, Dr. Kath Hill. And that was research into the way young survivors of the arena felt dismissed or misunderstood in education and healthcare settings, and that shouldn't be the case. I remember painfully how, to the inquiry that I set up in the aftermath of the attack, some of the authorities gave inaccurate accounts. And you can only begin to imagine the pain, the re-traumatization that that caused in the people still struggling to this day as a result of that attack. And Cheryl, can I say to you directly and to all of the families that you have represented so powerfully today, and remembering your husband and everybody who died and was killed in Sousse. I remember you coming to see me when Manchester had rallied round to support those who'd been deeply affected by the attack at the Manchester Arena. You said to me, who's rallying round for us? And you made the point that people who have been victims of terrorism abroad, and I know we're joined today by people affected by the Bali bombing and the bombing in Brussels and others perhaps too. You made the point, who's rallying round for us? Where is the support for us in the same way? And that was something that I never forgot. We can do better, so much better. And today is about being honest about that. And it's important that I am honest about that, standing in front of you all. I know there are so many stories like the ones I've just recounted, held by so many of you in this room today. Sometimes you can be made to feel like you're the person who's done wrong, that you're on your own, that no one in the system is fighting for you. Well, speaking on behalf of my ministerial colleagues, and the Victims Minister is with us today too, we will fight for you. The government I lead will fight for you too. And I'm sure all of the politicians in the room would say the same. And this is because we understand something that's fundamentally important to recognise. And it's that the state, in my view, has a particular responsibility to you. And it's because the terrorists who attacked you and your loved ones were trying to attack us all. They were trying to attack British values, what this country stands for. And that is why we owe that duty to each and every one of you in return. And have we always fulfilled that duty to the highest level? I don't think I can stand before you today and say that we have. But today is a day to commit to be better, to do better, to take the inspiration from the words we've heard from you today and challenge ourselves to do more. And that is what we will do. We will work to fulfill that responsibility. Today's report from Survivors Against Terror, and we salute everything that you do as an organisation. It's hard to hear it, but it describes a promise half kept. I'm not interested in half promises. I want a promise fully kept. I've asked our Victims Minister, Alex Davis-Jones, to lead this work. And look, there are lots of specific proposals for how we should do it, from access to legal assistance and representation, to reforming the Criminal Injuries Compensation Authority. You will all have had perhaps your own experiences of these things, to looking at what we can learn from other countries like France and Spain. We'll look at them all. And on the question of consulting you all over a permanent national memorial to the victims and survivors of terrorism, of course, we will do this too. And I make that commitment to you today. Your voices must be at the heart of every decision about how we remember and recognise those affected by terrorism. With your help, we will change the way this country recognises and supports you, but most importantly, from here, obviously those in some ways coming after you, because that's what this country should do. I want to say this at the conclusion of my remarks. How we stand together in the moment of a terrorist act says so much about who we are, and Patrick eloquently described that. I have felt that myself. I felt it in Manchester last year when we came together in the aftermath of the synagogue attack, all communities standing together. However bleak we feel sometimes about the division that we see, that Thelma spoke about, the hatred expressed all too easily these days, when you see what happens in those moments, you see that the vast majority of the British public are who they have always been: fundamentally wonderful, decent, generous, ready to do anything to support each other. And long may our country be that country And may we work together, all of us, to keep it that way. That's what this National Day demands, that we work together to achieve that. But it is something more too, and let me return to where I started, and that was my expression of profound admiration for you all. You are all a part of our national story. But as Dan said, none of you chose that, nor to be in the devastating position that you are. You were thrown against your will into the front line of our fight for our country's values. But thrown there, you stood tall. You refused to yield to terrorism's attempt to break and divide us. You fought to make things better for those coming after you. You worked to bring our communities together. So this day, to some degree, will be a day of the expression of our sympathy, but let's resolve to do this at the end. Let's resolve to make it much, much more than that as an annual day in the country's calendar. Let it forever be a day of recognition and celebration of the amazing people and families that you are, the very best of British and our country. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Prime Minister, for those powerful closing remarks and for recognising what so many people in this room have experienced in all the various incidents that have taken place in the last 20, 25 years or so, and for the commitments to the future of this day and support for those who need it. Before we conclude, I'd also like to offer my sincere thanks to everyone who's contributed to